Hey guys, before I introduce myself, I need to get straight to the woman who clicked on this episode with a heavy spirit. Let me ask you something really quickly. Have you ever been in a moment where your body told you something your mind wasn't ready to admit? A moment where your hand starts shaking, your chest tightens, you can't finish a sentence, or suddenly you feel like you're disappearing? And then you start sitting there thinking, why is it that I'm reacting like this? Why does my body feel unsafe even though I'm not in danger right now? Why does something that's supposed to feel good feel like it's literally a warning? So, if you've ever been stuck in a relationship where you are analyzing tone, silence, or weird energy shifts, if you've ever been the strong friend who holds everyone together but falls apart when the door closes, if you've ever felt like your childhood is still living in your adulthood, sis, this episode is for you. And let me say this before we dive deep. I'm building a program. It's called the Survival Mode Detox, and it's for women who look like they have it together on the outside, but have a nervous system that is screaming on the inside. So if you hear something in this episode today that makes you breathe differently, cry unexpectedly, or finally say, damn, that's me, then I'm telling you right now, don't ignore that. Go to my website, nchukymbee.com, and join the waitlist. This work will forever change your life. All right, let's get into it. All right, peace, y'all. Welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with the girl, yours truly, Nchukym Bee. I am a trauma-informed life coach, NLP practitioner, storyteller, and a woman who has lived through almost every single trauma response in the book and still came out carrying wisdom. Today's episode is personal. This isn't surface level. It's not motivational fluff. This is a heart to body conversation because the truth is, a lot of us are not living. We're coping, we're masking, we are surviving. And survival mode is one of the most toxic places to get stuck in. Not because you're weak, but because your body has not figured out that it's safe enough to leave. So I want to take the labels off for a second. Survival mode is not just exhaustion. It's not just being overwhelmed, and it has nothing to do with distracting yourself and being busy. Survival mode is a nervous system stuck in fight or flight long after the danger is gone. So it could look like you always being on edge, bracing yourself before checking a text message, second guessing every single thing, shutting down emotionally when things get too real. You can't sit still without feeling guilt and overgiving to prevent abandonment. You also won't know how to rest without collapsing. And the craziest part of all of this, you have identified with all of these traits. So you're walking around thinking that this is your personality. You think it's your attitude, your preference, your mood, but it's not. It's literally your body replaying your past. I want to break this down scientifically for a second because knowledge is always going to equate to power. Your nervous system has three main states. The first state is regulated, which is your safety. The second is survival, that is your fight or flight. And then your shutdown, which is your freeze or fawn. So when you have been through trauma, and that could look like childhood neglect, emotional abuse, domestic violence, instability, along those workings, your nervous system doesn't know how to switch off of survival mode. Even in moments of peace, the body stays alert, right? Even in love, the body prepares for losses and when you're calm, your body will wait for chaos. So I want to share a little bit of my story. This is the personal part because for most of my life, I didn't even know that I was in survival mode. I thought that I was just being strong, right? Because I feel like in the black and brown community, it is not socially acceptable or approved for a woman to be weak. So the way that, we have to carry these things that are associated as strength, um, a lot of the time your strength is based on the amount of trauma that you can sustain or take. So what that manifested for me is it looked like I was hyper independent. I had to learn how to become unbothered on the surface, which then led to nonchalantness. And in my mind, because of the aforementioned, and then even prior to, I just naturally assumed that I was hard to love, right? Because these were the experiences that I was having. And so my brain had to be able to make a logic of how come I can't, make these situations work? Why is it that I'm so difficult? Why do people perceive me as difficult? Right. And so I felt like, okay, maybe I'm just built different. But in being honest, I wasn't built different. I was built wounded. I never really grew up feeling safe. I grew up not having, adults in my life who naturally and normally modeled emotional regulation. I grew up learning to be my own protector at an age where I should have been protected. And when you grow up in chaos, your body naturally starts to learn to normalize it. As an adult, that warped my relationships. It warped the perception of what I thought I was supposed to be accepting, right? And so I didn't really have any standards. I had no boundaries. I just thought that in order to be accepted and to be loved and not be abandoned, that I had to be in a place of survival, right? So overly on edge, hyper analyzing every single thing, reading body motions and facial expressions and tones, and then trying to make a logic of that, right? And then also doing things that I felt would make me more valuable, like overgiving and saying yes to things that I actually wanted to say no to. I used to mistake chaos for passion, and I used to confuse inconsistency with chemistry. I tolerated behavior that I should not have ever entertained, right? And essentially they should have been deal breakers, but I didn't know any better because my nervous system was addicted to that familiarity. That was safety for me. That was my normal, what I've grown up for decades experiencing. So I want to talk about, one of the relationships that, I had to end for a second. And this is not to rehash the hurt, but I want to talk about how you show up and survival mode shows up in real time. And with this particular individual, I noticed patterns in myself that made me sit back and say, hold on, this is way deeper than just feelings itself, right? This was an individual that would go from warm to cold, engaged to very distant, soft spoken, but also very emotionally unavailable. And my body was reacting louder than my mind. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was literally a trauma response, right? And like just to go a little deeper, there would be times where, before I was actually fully aware of the pattern and the cycle that I was looped in, especially with this individual, but I would notice like small things like the love bombing, right? The coming in, to basically say things that would kind of give me temporary validation, reassurance. And then, the second that something wasn't done, that this individual felt entitled to, then I would notice a complete switch. So he would go from, oh, hey, queen, hey, beautiful, I just love you so much to what up, gang, and I'm like, it just would throw me for a loop every time until until it didn't, right? So I remember like the anxiety that I would experience and feel in this dynamic, and just being overwhelmed with like stress, anxiety, fear, depression, uncertainty, confusion. And these were all telltale signs that my body was remembering every time that love felt unstable, every time affection had a price, right? And every time my feelings were used as a weapon, for every time that I was blamed for someone else's behavior, the inconsistency felt like home to me, right? And it was not safe. And even though my mind was pretty much processing that this was essentially a very unsafe and very erratic situation, it was like my heart wasn't, on the same accord, like it wasn't working or operating on the same speed. And for me, that was kind of like really frustrating because I was trying to break through these cycles rather fast, but it's like we have to heal on our own accord. We have to heal on our own timing. And sometimes it does take time in order to get everything on the same frequency, right? You have to be able to get your mind to match your actions. So your nervous system will attach to what it knows and not to what it is that it deserves. And that is survival mode. So going a little deeper, survival mode is not an emotional weakness. It is neurological conditioning. That is when the body stays in fight or flight long enough, and then it essentially starts to rewire itself. So, and I've talked about this multiple times on different videos. If you guys are interested, you can check out my trauma mini series. I did this back in spring of the beginning of this year, because I felt like it was really important for people that are brand new to this space to really get a clear understanding of what trauma response is, right? And kind of the biochemical reactions. Not only can you feel, but you'll be able to see, right, in real time when you start observing and paying more attention to your own cycles. So the amygdala, which operates your alarm system, it gets bigger under duress, right? So the more you start to stress, you will dump heavy amounts of cortisol into your system, right? And it increases the size of your amygdala. The prefrontal cortex, that is your rational brain, weakens as a byproduct of this. Your cortisol levels will stay high. Your memory becomes trauma focused. So if you've ever seen someone that can only think about the negative, the bad, right? They don't ever remember anything good. 9 times out of 10, they have an injury, like a trauma injury in the mind, right? And it literally, you will see it manifest on a mental level. Your baseline becomes stress. The reason why is because you begin to learn that you cannot trust the good things. You start to expect betrayal and you settle for crumbs, and you will end up staying in situations way longer than you should, right? Because you essentially feel unsafe in your own body. And here's something very wild. A dysregulated nervous system doesn't just affect your emotions, it affects the way that you sleep. It starts to affect your digestion. It can affect your immune system. So this is where you see people that have prolonged trauma injuries, right? So their cortisol levels are so high because their baseline becomes stress, right? Stress and anxiety. And so you will literally see them um like kind of what is it called? They will decline, right? So these are people that might get like autoimmune system or dysfunctions, or not diseases like the capital A, if you know what I mean, right? But it'll be like something like what is that one disease that it affects your nerves? Like it pretty much where the nervous system will start to attack itself, right? because essentially your mind, if not regulated and controlled, right, you can't produce healthy chemicals and healthy levels, right? And so when it starts to go haywire, then your mind will essentially start to attack your body. It's crazy. It will attack your hormones, and it'll also affect your ability to connect, to focus, to trust. And this is why you have to shut down when someone raises their voice. Another reason why you might overthink every single text, why you apologize for overall just existing, and why you sabotage good relationships, why you keep revisiting old pains, and why you don't know who you are outside of the trauma. Now, for me, my identity, and I will say this with conviction, my identity used to be a victim, habitually the habitual victim, right? Because every encounter, every relationship that I tried to, get into, it was just an epic fail. And it left me questioning, my worth, my purpose, if I'm supposed to be with another person or if I'm just supposed to be by myself. It started making me feel like maybe I'm just not lovable, right? Because there has to be something wrong with me, which I was only partially truthful by saying maybe there's something wrong with me, because it wasn't that something was wrong with me. It was just that I did not have a clear direction or a roadmap of how to get there, right? The end goal for a lot of people is to find their divine counterpart and to experience love, right? But my definition of love was very misconstrued. It had everything to do with, traumatic cycles and how much I could endure just to keep this person in my space, right? Instead of being able to set standards and boundaries that align for what it is that I want, right? And so I wasted a lot of time in unnecessary connections because I didn't have enough knowledge, education, and self worth to be like, you know what, I can't do this. This is actually not for me, right? So, my breakthrough moment, and I talk about this a lot. I was actually sitting in my room, and because I spend a lot of time in there, when I'm not like podcasting or working, right? And so I just do a lot of self reflection. And there was a moment where I did not recognize myself at all. And for me, that was my breaking point. I literally started breaking down, and I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because my body had finally reached its limit. And I shared an experience, with a previous breakup, or one of a breakup that I had, and to the point where I could feel, the pressure in the back of my head, like I could feel the surge of chemical just dumping out. And I was just so anxious trying to breathe through it, and I could not figure it out. Um, every woman, I feel like, has that moment where you just reach your breaking point. So it's literally that silent breakdown. It's not one that you make public and you start, announcing to everybody. It's not like those long paragraphs of how someone had you messed up, right? It's usually, it happens in the confines of your own home, your car, you know what I mean, in the bathroom at work, where you just quietly collapse, right? That is the moment where you succumb to, this is not right, right? And it's hard, that realization that you've been carrying pain that was never yours to hold in the first place. Mine, it looked like staring into the mirror with tears running down my face, basically telling myself, I don't want to live like this anymore. I started asking myself, can I see myself doing this for the next 3 to 5 years? And I had to admit something very hard in that moment. My traumas were living in my body like ghosts. And every time that I tried to heal mentally, my body kept dragging me back, right? The moment led me to the work, that moment in itself led me to the work that I do right now. This is not surface level healing. It wasn't the affirmations or the Pinterest quotes. It was not just cute journaling. I literally needed nervous system repair. And that's what I started doing. And when I had got my life coaching credentials, I did that because I needed to start somewhere. I needed a baseline to start working on myself. I needed to find a way to get my emotions regulated, and I need to start building an identity for myself so that I can actually start moving around and building. And I also needed the survival mode detox. What is that? All right. So the survival mode detox it's more than a program. Okay. It's literally a homecoming. It's the work that I had to do to save myself, bundled in a 6 week course for you guys. Right. It's the structure that I created to keep other women from drowning in the same exact mannerism that I did. Inside the program, what I focus on is nervous system repair, trauma informed emotional regulation, inner child healing, identity reconstruction, right? So, who is it that you are outside of the things that you continue to keep yourself tied to, right? Safety practices, boundary setting, real ones, not the Instagram quote, the real ones, right? The ones that are going to force you to actually have to restructure the way that you have been interacting in general, right? A relationship pattern detox, generational healing, learning to rest without guilt and saying no, rebuilding consistency, rewiring your baseline. All of this, it isn't mindset work. This is full body work. This is emotional rewiring and it's psychological liberation, right? So if you guys haven't already, I want you guys to make sure that you go over to the website, join the email list, because everyone that joins the email list, I will send you a 10% off discount code when the course finally does launch. So that way you will get a very generous discount. Okay. And before we close today, I want you to talk to yourself for a moment. Ask yourself, where is it that I'm still surviving? What part of me is exhausted? And what is it that I'm pretending doesn't hurt me? Why do I hold on to people who hurt me? Why does peace make me feel nervous? And why does chaos feel familiar? The most important question that I need you guys to ask yourself is, what would my life look like if I actually started to feel safe? Let that sit, and then I want you to actually feel that. If this episode made you breathe differently, if it made you reflect, if it invoked some sort of emotion, if you felt uncomfortable in a way that felt like truth, sis, your body is asking for healing. Not the kind where you pretend that everything is fine, but the kind where you actually learn to live again. So, my survival mode detox is for women who are ready to stop repeating traumatic cycles and finally come home to themselves. So, if you're ready for softness, if you're ready for peace, if you're ready for consistency and safety, make sure you guys go to my website, nchukymbee.com. Do it right now. Join my email list. Make sure you guys download your free 7 days to survival guide. Okay, I've packed a lot of stuff that's going to be a good starting point to addressing traumas, addressing if you actually are enduring or going through trauma, right? And some ways that you can start to regulate these, right? The patterns that have become a byproduct of the trauma, because you don't have to keep surviving. You deserve to be held, healed, and reborn. And on this journey, you're not alone. Until next time, take a deep breath, unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, and remember, you are worth safety, and you are worth love. Now, before I actually hit end, please make sure if you guys have watched all the way till the end, make sure that you go ahead and hit that subscription button. Make sure you guys follow, hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. And make sure you leave me a review. Let me know what your takeaway was from this episode. Was there anything in this episode that I said that resonates? If so, what was it? And how do you plan on applying this to your life? Until next time, guys. Okay, bye.